Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dig into the stories that shape our lives, and we'll do it by weaving together some incredible insights from poetry, philosophy, and history into one single story.
So let's just jump right in with a question for you. What story is defining your life right now? Is it one you've inherited? Maybe one you're constantly fighting over? Or, and this is the big one, is it a story you are actively writing for yourself? Today, we're breaking down these three really powerful narratives.
First up, let's talk about the one that maybe has the most powerful grip on us, the story we're born into, the one we just can't seem to escape. And you know, A.K. Ramanujan captures this feeling perfectly in his incredible poem about a family's great house.
So Ramanujan describes this house not as, just bricks and mortar. It's way more than that. It's like a living, breathing archive. It's a place that just accumulates everything and everyone that ever crosses its path, holding on to the family's entire history, the good, the bad, all of it.
And what's really fascinating here is how this collection just escalates. I mean, it starts with pretty mundane stuff, right? Stray cows, library books you forgot to return. But then it gets bigger. It starts collecting people, servants and sons-in-law who basically become permanent fixtures. And then bam, it's the very DNA of the family itself, these inherited diseases. The house just absorbs everything.
And here's the real kicker. Nothing ever truly leaves. Cotton that gets shipped off to England, it just comes back as fabric. Sons who try to run away, well, they end up sending their own kids back. It just hammers home this central idea. Our inherited story, this great house, has this powerful, almost gravitational pull on our lives.
Okay, but what happens when the stories we're living aren't built on history at all, but on falsehoods? This brings us to our second kind of story, the one we're always fighting over.
You know, centuries ago, the philosopher Francis Bacon was puzzling over this really deep question. Why on earth do human beings seem to love lies? And he wasn't just talking about poets making things up or merchants trying to scam you. He sensed there was something much deeper going on.
So Bacon's whole argument is that truth can be, it can be pretty harsh, right? It's like seeing things in the plain, unforgiving light of day. It takes work. Lies, on the other hand, they're seductive. They're like watching a show by candlelight. Everything looks a little better, a little more dramatic, and at the end of the day, a lot more pleasurable.
So what does that really mean? It means we often grab onto a comfortable lie instead of a difficult truth, simply because it feels better. It gives us this sense of hope, or maybe a quick feeling of victory, even if it's totally hollow. And this brings us to a perfect, and I mean perfectly chaotic example of this whole idea in action.
Okay, for this, let's jump into a play by Anton Chekhov, A Marriage Proposal, where you can see this whole concept just explode in the most hilarious, disastrous way.
The setup here is super simple. You've got this guy, Lomov, and he shows up to propose to his neighbor, Natalia. That's it. That's the main plot. This is the big, life-changing story they are supposed to be living out. It should be a pretty happy, straightforward narrative, keyword being should.
And boom, right here, this is Bacon's point, live on stage. The really important story, the marriage proposal, gets completely thrown out the window. And why? Because they get totally sucked into the immediate pleasure of arguing over these ridiculous, petty truths. Who owns some random piece of land? Whose dog is better? These arguments offer that quick, satisfying win that just feels better in the moment.
You see? That desire to win these totally meaningless arguments, to feel that little hit of pleasure from being right about the meadows or the dogs, it completely hijacks their actual long-term goal. They choose the momentary pleasure of the lie over the much harder truth of actually building a future together.
Okay, so we've seen how we can get trapped by the stories we inherit and completely sidetracked by the ones we fight over. So that brings us to the third and maybe the most powerful idea of all. What does it actually mean to write your own story?
For this, let's go back to 1893. A young M.K. Gandhi gets off a train in Pretoria, South Africa, and he steps directly into a story that has already been written for him. And it's a deeply hostile narrative of racial discrimination. The story society had waiting for him was one that said he was inferior.
Now, just look at the arc of his very first day. He shows up totally isolated, a victim of this story that society keeps throwing at him. But then, something shifts. An unexpected kindness happens. He has a challenging conversation. And through these moments, you can almost see the gears turning. You can see him shifting from just being a character in someone else's story to becoming the author of his own.
And this, right here, is the absolute turning point. He's offered an easy answer, a pre-written story he could just adopt, but he refuses. Instead of just accepting an outside truth, he makes this quiet internal decision to find his own, starting with his own faith. That quiet resolve was the very first sentence of a brand new story, a story that, as we all know, would eventually change the world.
So, from the inescapable house that we inherit, to the trivial little arguments we get lost in, all the way to the profound truths we have to find for ourselves, it all comes down to this. We are all living inside of these stories. The only question is, who's holding the pen?